Hi guys, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy, and this time I'm reviewing March, which is a series of graphic memoirs by John Lewis, Andrew Aydin, and Nate Powell, and they tell the story of Congressman John Lewis and his involvement in the Civil Rights Movement. This is a series of 3 graphic novels, which is really cool, and I think makes the Civil Rights Movement more accessible to teenagers or people like me who just don't want to read long, thick nonfiction books. So John Lewis is currently serving as a representative in Congress from Georgia, and he was one of the big figures in the civil rights movement. Out of the 10 people who spoke at the March on Washington, he's the only one who's still around. So it's important that he tells the story of the civil rights movement and what was happening with the organizing and leading it. And I think it's especially relevant to today, that we know how important protesting is and that it can make a difference, and that we're still, in a way, we're still fighting the same fight, but that we have made progress, which is also important to remember the victories that we've already won and to make sure we keep those victories. So John Lewis was involved in the Lynch counter sit-ins in Nashville, Tennessee. He was one of the Freedom Riders. He helped plan and spoke at the March on Washington, and he played a big part in Selma, which was this big push for voter rights in the South, particularly in Selma, was really bad. And he also plays that off of President Obama's first inauguration on January 20th, 2009. So it's kind of told the course of the day of the inauguration, and then John Lewis is having memories about stuff that had happened in the civil rights movement and kind of him reflecting on how far they've come, which is cool, and it works really well to kind of show the bigger picture of everything. So he also tells the story of like the bus boycotts in Montgomery, which he wasn't actually part of, but what a influence that had on him, and everything that was happening in Birmingham that led to the letter from Birmingham jail that Martin Luther King wrote. He meets Martin Luther King several times, which is cool, and them working together. And he also doesn't like shy away from the points where he disagreed with him, or he's dealing with these big civil rights leaders, and he's this young college kid, and how they compromised and talked things through, and really focusing on the importance of nonviolent demonstrations and protests. He also looks at other points of view besides his own. So in here, we get to see some of the whites who supported segregation, and like from the elected officials and the speeches they were talking about, to individual people, some of the white teenagers who were causing violence and stuff. So it kind of looks at why people would want segregation also, while still like saying, hey, this is wrong. And there are also people like his parents who maybe don't want to live in a segregated society, but it's easier not to fight it, and it's safer, especially when you're being threatened with violence, to not stand up, not speak out. And how there are different people's approaches also, people who were protesting who didn't have it in them to be nonviolent. One point where they basically have a workshop on how to be nonviolent and how to take abuse when people are throwing it at you, and really testing them before they get put in these situations where the cameras are going to be on them. And some people just walked out and were like, I can't do this. I can't be nonviolent. I'll help you get to these locations, or I'll make signs or something, but I can't be a part of this in that way. And he's just not judgmental about that. Like, that's just different people have different ways of fighting injustice also. There's also a bit where he talks about Malcolm X and how he respected him and how they were fighting the same fight, even if they were fighting it from different perspectives and disagreed on the hows. The art style in this book is all black and white. They're pencil drawings, basically. It works well and does a good job of showing like the emotions of what was happening and actually getting us to visualize what it was like to be in these situations and at these events, which is really awesome. A tiny gripe on this is sometimes the art doesn't look like historical people. So like there's a couple of panels where it's Martin Luther King, and you know what Martin Luther King looks like. He's got pictures all over the place. But it took me a while to realize when they jump around that, hey, that's Martin Luther King talking, and who he's talking to. Or like President John F. Kennedy didn't really look like the pictures of John F. Kennedy that we're used to. And so that's a bit confusing, but it's my only like real gripe on the art. Otherwise, I think it does a good job. So that's the end of my non-spoilery bit on March volumes 1 and 2. Presumably, volume 3 is also amazing. Books 1 and 2, I gave both of them 5 stars. I really think that they're important and they're a really good way of discussing these issues and making it accessible to people who maybe wouldn't otherwise be learning about these, especially in written format. I really, really highly recommend both of these books. So you guys should totally go check them out. So peace out. I love you guys and keep reading. Bye.